In the heart of Long Beach, California, the Imperial Sunset Hotel stood as a symbol of luxury and exclusivity, its golden glow a beacon to travelers seeking comfort. Yet, for one man, an iconic figure in the world of music, what should have been a routine night stay became a turning point. Snoop Dogg, a global superstar known for his laid-back demeanor, walked into the hotel one rainy evening only to be met with rejection at the front desk. Despite the hotel appearing nearly empty, the young clerk, Evan, insisted there were no rooms available, a claim that was immediately contradicted when a couple entered and was swiftly offered accommodation. It didn't take long for Snoop to realize that the rejection he faced was not a mere oversight, but an act rooted in something far more insidious: prejudice. Instead of reacting with anger, Snoop's sharp business mind saw an opportunity not just to address his own experience but to change the very culture of the hotel and the lives of everyone who worked there. What followed was a bold decision to buy the hotel, not just as a business venture, but as a platform for transformation. The Imperial Sunset would no longer be a place of exclusion. It would become a beacon of respect, inclusivity, and fairness, under the leadership of someone who understood the power of dignity. Snoop Dogg's arrival at the hotel. It was a stormy night when Snoop Dogg arrived at the Imperial Sunset Hotel in Long Beach, California. The rain fell in heavy sheets, drumming against the sleek, black exterior of his SUV as he pulled into the circular driveway. The hotel's golden glow from the chandeliers spilled out onto the wet pavement, creating a warm contrast against the cold, dark rain. From the outside, the hotel appeared to be an epitome of luxury and comfort. It was a grand building, polished marble floors, expensive furnishings, and an aura of exclusivity that made it a desired destination for those seeking the highest quality service and accommodation. For most, this hotel was a sanctuary, a haven where weary travelers could find rest, away from the rigors of their journeys. But for Snoop, this night would be different. As Snoop stepped out of his black SUV, he adjusted the collar of his signature blue and gold jacket. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches, with a presence that was impossible to ignore, he immediately commanded attention. His polished shoes clicked on the marble floor as he walked into the lobby of the Imperial Sunset Hotel. The scent of fresh-cut roses filled the air, mixing with the faint aroma of espresso from the nearby lounge. The soft hum of quiet conversation and clinking glasses could be heard in the background, but there was an almost eerie calmness about the space. No bustling crowds, no hurried staff, and no noticeable rush for rooms. It was as if the lobby was almost entirely empty. Snoop's demeanor was as laid back as ever, his signature smile never wavering. He approached the front desk with the calm and confidence of a man used to navigating the complexities of the world, both in music and business. The front desk clerk, a younger man with slicked-back blonde hair and a name tag reading Evan, barely glanced up as Snoop approached. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, typing deliberately but slowly, as though taking his time with something trivial. "Good evening," Snoop said, his voice calm and warm. "I'd like a room for the night. My flight got delayed, and I'll need a place to stay before catching the next one." Evan, not looking up, let out a dismissive breath and began his response. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, his voice cold and impersonal, almost as though he wasn't really sorry at all. "We're fully booked." Snoop took a quick glance around the lobby, noticing the absence of any guests. The hotel certainly didn't seem to be bustling with business. The soft chime of an elevator marked the arrival of only one other guest. A man, who seemed to be the only other person checking in at this hour, walked across the marble floor, his footsteps echoing faintly in the otherwise silent lobby. Snoop's attention was immediately drawn back to Evan, who was still typing away at the keyboard, his tone hardly apologetic. "Fully booked, you say? Not even a single room?" Snoop asked, his voice calm but laced with a hint of curiosity. He could feel something was off. He'd been in plenty of hotels around the world and had faced plenty of late-night check-ins, but something about this encounter felt different. Evan's fingers froze for a brief second as he continued typing. There was a slight flicker of hesitation in his eyes, a shift in his demeanor that Snoop was quick to notice. With a thin smile, Evan finally looked up. His lips curled into a smirk, barely noticeable but enough to give the impression that he wasn't treating Snoop with the same level of respect he would afford a regular guest. "That's correct," Evan replied. "There's nothing available at the moment." Before Snoop could respond, the revolving doors of the hotel spun open, and a middle-aged couple entered, their suitcases wheeling behind them. Evan's demeanor shifted immediately, as though flipping a switch. His smile widened, and his tone became noticeably warmer. "Welcome to the Imperial Sunset," Evan said, his voice full of sweetness. "Do you have a reservation?" The man shook his head, and without skipping a beat, Evan enthusiastically nodded. "Not a problem," he said, quickly tapping away at the keyboard. "Let me check for availability." Snoop stood there, his calm exterior slipping just slightly. He couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of injustice building within him. He observed as Evan swiftly processed the couple's check-in, tapping the keyboard a few times before handing over a room key. The couple walked away, smiling and chatting amongst themselves, oblivious to the fact that they had been given priority treatment. Snoop's mind raced. He'd seen enough. It wasn't about the room. It wasn't about the hotel being fully booked. It was about something far deeper, something that was happening behind the scenes. Clearing his throat, Snoop finally spoke up. "I thought you said you were fully booked," he said, his tone composed but tinged with an unmistakable edge. Evan's practiced smile faltered for just a moment. His eyes flickered nervously, and Snoop could see the discomfort on his face. "I meant we don't have anything that would suit your needs," Evan replied, his voice suddenly lacking the confidence it had moments before. The truth hit Snoop like a cold wave. He realized then that this wasn't just a matter of availability. It wasn't about being fully booked or not. It was something far uglier. The rejection was personal, and Snoop understood the deeper message behind Evan's actions. But rather than reacting with anger or frustration, Snoop chose to remain calm. "Thank you for your time," Snoop said, his voice as composed as it had been when he first entered the hotel. He turned without another word and walked back out into the rain, the click of his polished shoes fading behind him as he exited the hotel. The realization of prejudice and Snoop's reaction. As Snoop stepped back out into the rain, the sting of the encounter lingered. The cold droplets hit his skin, but his thoughts were far from the weather. He stood under the hotel's awning, allowing the sound of the rain on the canopy above to fill the silence. The situation at the hotel weighed heavily on him, and as he leaned against a marble pillar, the experience replayed in his mind. The polite rejection, the subtle shift in Evan's demeanor, the immediate, unquestioning service offered to the couple, all of it came rushing back. Something didn't sit right, and it wasn't just about the room. It wasn't even about the inconvenience of a delayed flight. No, it was something far more significant. This was about how he, as a person, had been treated. Snoop wasn't the kind of person to jump to conclusions. He was used to navigating complex situations in the entertainment industry, where appearances and intentions could often be deceptive. But in this case, there was no mistaking what had just occurred. He had been rejected not because the hotel was full or because he had arrived at the wrong time. He had been rejected because of the assumptions that came with his appearance, because of who he was, not what he needed. The realization hit him with clarity. The hotel, once a symbol of luxury, was also a place that allowed its staff to operate with a clear bias. And Snoop knew all too well that such treatment wasn't just a one-off mistake. It was a reflection of something much deeper, something ingrained in the hotel's culture. The moment left a bitter taste in his mouth, but instead of reacting impulsively, Snoop chose to remain calm. Anger, he knew, was a waste of energy. He had spent decades in the music industry, navigating the pitfalls of fame and success. He had learned that there was a time to speak and a time to act, and tonight, it was a time for action. This wasn't just about him. Snoop had seen enough over the years to know that, for many, such treatment wasn't a rare occurrence. It was a part of everyday life. Whether it was people being turned away at hotels, restaurants, or stores, there were countless others who faced the same quiet rejection. They didn't have the platform or the voice to call out such behavior, but Snoop did. His calm exterior remained, but his mind was working in overdrive. He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through a list of nearby hotels, trying to find somewhere else to stay. But his eyes kept drifting back to the revolving doors of the Imperial Sunset. Something about the scene inside had lingered in his mind, like a faint smell that wouldn't go away. The way Evan had dismissed him so easily, the way he had made assumptions based on nothing more than appearances, left a hollow feeling inside. It wasn't just about the rejection, it was about the implications of what that rejection meant for the larger world. Snoop knew that this kind of prejudice wasn't confined to the walls of this hotel, it was everywhere. But he also knew that there was something he could do about it. Something he could change, right here, right now. He leaned casually against the marble pillar, out of sight of the lobby but still close enough to observe. Snoop was a man of patience, and in this moment, he knew he had to wait. He had to watch, had to make sure that what he suspected wasn't just a fleeting feeling, but the truth. His suspicions were confirmed within moments. A young man in his 20s, wearing cargo pants and a hoodie, strolled into the lobby, a backpack slung low over one shoulder. He looked every bit the part of a traveler, tired, disheveled, and seeking a place to rest. Snoop didn't need to hear the exchange. He could see it written all over Evan's face. The clerk's exaggerated nods, his wide smile, the lack of hesitation, all of it spoke volumes. Without even a second thought, the man was handed a room key. No questions. No delays. No issues. Snoop's lips pressed into a firm line as he absorbed the injustice before him. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. It was a pattern. And it was something that couldn't just be ignored. He felt the fire of determination rise within him. But rather than acting out of anger or frustration, Snoop chose to act from a place of focus. His first instinct was to storm back into the lobby and confront Evan, to call out the hypocrisy and racism that had just unfolded. But years of navigating the music industry had taught him the value of restraint. There was a time to speak and a time to act, and this was the latter. Confronting Evan in that moment might have felt good, but it wouldn't have made a lasting difference. Instead, Snoop allowed the moment to pass. He took one last look at the hotel, then turned and walked back to his car. The leather seat was cool against his back as he slid into the driver's seat, the soft hum of the engine starting up as the rain continued to drum against the windows. The hotel's golden lights faded in the rearview mirror, but they didn't fade from his mind. The sting of rejection still hung in the air, but Snoop wasn't angry. No, he wasn't angry at all. He was focused. This was the moment that would spark change. This wasn't just about him. It wasn't about one man being treated unfairly. It was about a system, a culture that allowed such things to happen without consequence. Snoop knew that, if he wanted to make a difference, he would have to do something bigger than just speak out. He had to take action. He had to make sure that the world knew that such behavior would no longer be tolerated. The windshield wipers swept rhythmically across the glass as Snoop navigated the wet streets of Long Beach. His thoughts remained fixed on the night's events, not as a wound but as fuel. He didn't feel anger. What he felt was something sharper, determination. This wasn't just about righting a wrong done to him, it was about righting a wrong done to countless others. Snoop's decision to take action. As Snoop drove away from the Imperial Sunset Hotel, the cold rain beating against the windshield seemed to echo his thoughts. His mind, usually sharp and focused, was now consumed with the events that had unfolded in the lobby just moments before. The rejection, the prejudice, the blatant disregard for hospitality, it had all left a mark on him. Snoop wasn't the kind of person to let something like that slide, especially when he knew he had the power to make a difference. In the silence of his car, as the streetlights passed by in blurred streaks, an idea began to take shape in his mind. This wasn't just about a bad experience. This was a chance to create real, lasting change. Snoop was no stranger to adversity. He had spent decades navigating the ups and downs of the music industry, building an empire from the ground up. He knew the game. He knew what it was like to be underestimated, to face obstacles that others couldn't even see. He had always turned those challenges into opportunities, and tonight would be no different. The situation at the hotel wasn't just a personal affront, it was a reminder of something much bigger, the systemic issues of inequality and prejudice that many people face every day, but don't have the means or the platform to challenge. As Snoop navigated the rain-soaked streets of Long Beach, he could feel his frustration turning into focus. He wasn't angry, not at all. Anger was a waste of energy, and Snoop knew better than to waste his time on that. Instead, he felt something sharper building inside him, a calm, calculated determination. He wasn't going to let this pass. Not tonight. Not ever. He had the power to do something about it. And he was going to do just that. Pulling into a nearby diner, the bright red neon sign casting an inviting glow in the rainy night, Snoop parked his car and stepped out. The smell of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee greeted him as he entered. The diner, called MO 24/7 Eats, was a humble spot. It wasn't a place that screamed luxury or exclusivity. But that was exactly why Snoop had chosen it. It was the kind of place where people from all walks of life could come together. No judgments, no prejudice, just good food and good company. It was the kind of place where Snoop felt at home. He slid into a booth by the window, pulling out his laptop as he sat down. The waitress approached, setting a steaming mug of coffee in front of him. She didn't say anything, she just smiled and walked away. Snoop didn't need much. He was already deep in thought. His fingers flew across the keys as he began typing furiously, his mind racing through the possibilities. This wasn't going to be just another hotel deal. This was going to be a statement. He was going to show the world that things could be done differently. That there was room for kindness, fairness, and respect, no matter who you were. Within minutes, Snoop had dialed his attorney, Lisa Reynolds. Lisa was a sharp negotiator with a reputation for closing deals at lightning speed. Snoop had worked with her on several occasions, and he knew that if anyone could help him get this done, it was her. He waited as the phone rang, his heart beating steadily in his chest. "Lisa," Snoop said when she picked up. "I need the paperwork on the Imperial Sunset Hotel finalized by sunrise." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before Lisa's voice came through, surprised but intrigued. "Sunrise? That's ambitious even for you, Snoop," she said. Snoop didn't hesitate. "Consider it done," he replied, his voice steady and commanding. "Send the paperwork to my phone as soon as it's ready. I'll sign electronically." Lisa didn't ask any more questions. She knew better than to doubt him when he spoke with such certainty. "You got it," she said. "I'll have it to you before the morning." The conversation ended, and Snoop leaned back in his booth, staring out the window. The rain had slowed, and the streetlights cast a soft, golden glow across the wet pavement. Snoop took a deep breath, letting the moment settle. He didn't need to rush through this. He knew what he was doing. This wasn't just about buying a hotel. It was about changing a culture. It was about sending a message to everyone who had ever been rejected, ignored, or belittled because of who they were. It was about showing that things could be different, that respect and dignity were non-negotiable. The clock on the diner's wall ticked away, and Snoop's team worked tirelessly in the background to get everything finalized. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink, the deal was done. The Imperial Sunset Hotel was officially his. Snoop closed his laptop with a quiet satisfaction. His coffee had gone cold, but he didn't care. The real work was about to begin. He stood up from the booth, stretched, and took one last look around the diner. This was where it all started, the moment he decided to take action. Snoop wasn't just going to be another celebrity with a hotel. He was going to be a force for change. He was going to take a stand for what was right, and he wasn't going to back down. As he stepped out into the cool morning air, the world seemed to stretch out before him, filled with endless possibilities. He had a mission now, a purpose greater than anything he had ever pursued before. The Imperial Sunset Hotel was just the beginning. The purchase of the Imperial Sunset Hotel and Snoop's arrival. The early morning sun bathed Long Beach in soft hues of orange and pink as Snoop drove towards the Imperial Sunset Hotel. His mind was calm, but his thoughts were focused and sharp. By now, he had already sealed the deal. His team had worked through the night, pushing forward the paperwork for the acquisition of the hotel. The sale was official, and as of that morning, the Imperial Sunset was no longer part of the struggling hotel chain. It now belonged to him. The sense of accomplishment, however, wasn't what stood out most as he drove through the streets of Long Beach. What resonated most was the realization that he wasn't just stepping into the role of an owner. He was stepping into a new era for the hotel, a moment that would mark a significant shift, both for the building and the people who worked within it. Snoop's arrival at the hotel was nothing like the previous night. Gone was the uncertainty and frustration of the rejection he had faced. Today, he walked with quiet confidence, his shoulders squared, his head held high. As his sleek black SUV pulled up to the entrance, he could feel the eyes of the staff turning toward him. Word had already spread about the hotel's new ownership, and though none of the employees had ever met him in person, they knew who he was. They knew the magnitude of the change he was about to bring. As he stepped out of the car, Snoop adjusted his custom-designed jacket, making sure every detail was in place. His sharp suit and sunglasses exuded the same calm authority he carried everywhere, but there was something different in the air that morning, an almost palpable shift in the energy surrounding him. The hotel, once a place of aloof luxury and quiet exclusion, felt different already. Even as the morning sun bathed the exterior in golden light, there was an undeniable sense of something new, a change that had already begun. The staff, busy with the usual preparations for the day, didn't initially recognize him. They were focused on their work, moving about in their usual routines. But when Snoop walked through the door, something shifted. The mood in the lobby seemed to change instantly. There was a subtle hesitation in the air, a pause in the rhythm of the hotel. Eyes flickered toward him as the front desk clerk, Evan, looked up from behind the counter. The recognition was immediate. Evan's face, which had been calm and collected just moments before, now displayed a slight flicker of unease. He didn't expect Snoop Dogg to walk through the door, but there he was, standing in front of him. Snoop didn't waste any time. He was there for a purpose. The last time he had stepped into this hotel, he had been treated as an outsider, rejected without reason. But now, he was the one who held the keys to the future of the Imperial Sunset Hotel. He approached the front desk, his every step purposeful and deliberate. The staff around him seemed to hold their breath, watching as Snoop took his place at the counter. "Good morning," Snoop said, his voice firm but calm. Evan stood frozen for a moment before offering a tentative smile. "Good morning, sir," Evan said, his usual polished demeanor slowly returning. "How can I assist you today?" Snoop didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small black folder. He opened it slowly, the sound of the crisp paper filling the otherwise silent space. Evan watched, his expression flickering between confusion and concern as Snoop carefully laid a stack of legal documents on the counter. The papers were stamped and signed, finalized agreements confirming the transfer of ownership. "I'm here to make an introduction," Snoop said, his tone measured but commanding. "My name is Snoop Dogg, and as of this morning, I am the new owner of the Imperial Sunset Hotel." For a moment, there was silence. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Evan's face drained of color as the reality of the situation set in. He had no idea how to respond, no script to follow. The confident, composed front desk clerk was now standing before a man who had just changed the very course of the hotel's future. There was no room for excuses, no way to mask his surprise. I don't understand," Evan stammered, his usual charm now completely absent. You're the new owner?" Snoop smiled, his expression calm yet firm. He wasn't here to explain himself. He didn't need to. The reality of the situation was clear. "I'll make it simple for you," Snoop said, his voice never wavering. "This hotel is now under my ownership. And last night, I had the pleasure of experiencing firsthand how some of the staff treat potential guests." Evan's eyes widened as the weight of Snoop's words settled in. He began to open his mouth, but Snoop raised his hand, silencing any potential excuses. There would be no room for apologies here. His actions spoke louder than words. The behavior that Snoop had witnessed the night before couldn't be brushed aside with a few empty words. "Let's just say I was unimpressed," Snoop continued, his gaze locking with Evan's. "But that's not what I'm here to talk about." Snoop turned away from Evan and faced the rest of the staff, who had slowly gathered in the lobby. Their faces were a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and uncertainty. It was clear they had all heard the news by now, but seeing Snoop in person brought the reality of the change into focus. This wasn't just about a new owner. This was about the beginning of something different. Something better. "I believe in running businesses that represent fairness, respect, and inclusivity," Snoop began, his voice growing stronger. "Unfortunately, this hotel has fallen short of that standard. But that's going to change. Starting today." The staff listened intently, their expressions shifting from apprehension to a cautious optimism. The tension in the room was thick, but Snoop didn't let it linger. He wasn't there to lecture. He was there to lead. "You'll all have the opportunity to grow with this new chapter," Snoop continued, his gaze sweeping over the group. "Except for those who refuse to treat every guest with dignity. I don't tolerate prejudice in any form." The room seemed to exhale collectively as Snoop's words sank in. There was no room for discrimination, no tolerance for the kind of treatment Snoop had experienced just hours before. The message was clear. The culture of the Imperial Sunset Hotel was about to change, and it would begin with each and every person who worked there. Evan, who had been standing in stunned silence, finally muttered something under his breath, but Snoop cut him off immediately. "Your actions last night have no place in the future of this hotel. You're dismissed. Effective immediately." Snoop's voice was firm, and there was no mistaking the finality in his words. The other staff members looked on, some nodding subtly, others exchanging glances. There was a palpable shift in the room, a quiet understanding spreading through the staff. Change was coming, and it wasn't just about the hotel, it was about the people within it. Snoop's gaze softened as he addressed the staff again, his voice steady. "Let me be clear, this isn't just about last night. This is about the culture of this hotel. The message it sends, and the experience it provides to every person who walks through those doors." The staff, once hesitant, now seemed more engaged. They could feel the shift. They could see the opportunity. And for the first time in a long while, they realized they were part of something bigger than themselves, implementing changes and creating a culture of respect. The shift in energy at the Imperial Sunset Hotel was palpable in the hours that followed Snoop's arrival. The staff, once uncertain and resistant, now found themselves at the start of a new chapter, one that promised to be nothing like the past. As Snoop stood in the lobby, addressing the team, it was clear that this wasn't just a business transaction, it was the beginning of a cultural overhaul. He wasn't just going to own a hotel, he was going to reshape its very identity. The new policies, the new direction, would be guided by the values that had always been core to Snoop's own personal philosophy: fairness, respect, inclusivity, and integrity. It wasn't just about creating a more welcoming space for guests, it was about transforming the way the entire hotel operated, from the front desk to housekeeping, from management to the staff behind the scenes. After dismissing Evan, Snoop turned his attention to the rest of the staff. He knew that change wasn't going to happen overnight, but he also understood that real transformation required a strong, united effort from everyone involved. For that reason, he was committed to bringing the team along for the ride. Everyone from the long-term employees to the newer hires would have a part to play in this new vision. "You're going to be part of something special here," Snoop told the gathered staff. "But it's going to take all of us, working together, to make this place the beacon it should be. The culture of this hotel will be one of respect, inclusivity, and excellence. No exceptions. You will all undergo comprehensive training to ensure that every guest feels valued, regardless of who they are or where they come from." Maria, the housekeeper who had been working at the Imperial Sunset for over a decade, stood among the staff, her heart pounding. She had heard the whispers, the subtle prejudices, the comments made by some of her colleagues, most notably Evan, the now former front desk clerk. Maria had long felt the weight of the unspoken biases that floated through the air, but she had kept her head down, focusing on her work, knowing that speaking up might cost her more than she was willing to risk. Now, with Snoop's leadership, she saw a glimmer of hope. Change was coming, and she had a part to play in it. "Maria," Snoop said, his voice cutting through the silence, "you've been with the hotel for a long time. You've seen the good and the bad. You're going to play a big role in this new chapter. You and the rest of the team will be trained in diversity, equity, and inclusion. This hotel is going to become a place where everyone feels welcome." Maria's eyes widened in surprise, her mind racing. She never expected to be singled out in such a positive way. But more than that, she felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had seen how some of the staff had treated guests based on their backgrounds, their appearances, their socio-economic status. She had seen the prejudices, the unspoken barriers that kept certain people from feeling truly at home. Now, with Snoop's guidance, she had the opportunity to help tear those walls down and rebuild the hotel into a place where everyone was treated with the dignity they deserved. Snoop's words struck a chord with the rest of the staff as well. There was no doubt in their minds that the transformation would be radical. It wasn't just about repainting the walls or upgrading the decor, it was about shifting the mindset of the entire hotel, from the top down. Snoop knew that to build the kind of environment he wanted, the staff had to understand the gravity of the change. It was about more than policies. It was about fostering a culture of understanding, empathy, and respect. Over the next few weeks, the hotel underwent a complete overhaul, not just physically but culturally. Construction crews moved in, replacing outdated furniture, repainting the walls with warm, inviting tones, and reworking the lobby to create an atmosphere that felt welcoming to everyone. The old, cold, sterile feel of the space was replaced with a sense of openness, comfort, and hospitality. Snoop wanted every guest who walked through the doors to feel a sense of belonging, to know that they were welcomed no matter their background. But the renovations didn't stop at the physical space. Snoop insisted on regular training sessions for all hotel staff. These weren't just lectures or presentations, they were conversations. Experts in diversity, equity, and inclusion came in to facilitate workshops where staff members could share their experiences, confront their biases, and learn practical ways to create a more inclusive environment. There were deep discussions about privilege, microaggressions, and the subtle ways prejudice often crept into interactions, even when it wasn't intended. Maria, who had often felt the weight of discrimination in small, invisible ways, found herself participating more actively than she ever had before. The training opened her eyes to the ways she could help build a more inclusive culture, not just for guests, but for her fellow employees as well. Snoop took a hands-on approach to the training, joining in on many of the sessions and speaking from his own experiences. He shared stories from his career, highlighting the ways in which he had encountered prejudice and discrimination throughout his life. He didn't shy away from his own struggles, showing the staff that even someone as successful as him had faced barriers because of his race and background. His openness inspired others to do the same. The transformation wasn't just about the physical changes to the hotel, it was about changing hearts and minds. The employees, many of whom had been working at the hotel for years, began to shift their attitudes, realizing that they had a responsibility to ensure every guest felt respected. The sense of camaraderie grew stronger as the staff members started to understand each other better, and they were motivated by the knowledge that they were contributing to something bigger than themselves. Meanwhile, the hotel's reputation began to shift. Word of the changes spread quickly, both among the guests who had previously stayed at the Imperial Sunset and those who had heard about it through social media and local news. Former guests, curious to see the transformation for themselves, began returning to the hotel, eager to witness firsthand the changes that Snoop was making. They were met with a renewed sense of warmth and hospitality, and they took to social media to share their experiences, praising not just the luxurious accommodations but the overall atmosphere of kindness and respect that now permeated the hotel. Snoop's vision was beginning to come to life. It was more than just a successful business venture. It was a statement to the world that change was possible, and that the hospitality industry could be a place where respect for all guests was a priority. The Imperial Sunset Hotel had undergone a complete transformation in the weeks that followed Snoop's acquisition. It wasn't just the renovation of the physical space, the real change was in the people. The hotel had become a beacon of inclusivity and respect, an example of what could happen when individuals came together with a shared vision for a better future. The old, cold, and exclusive atmosphere had been replaced with one of warmth, openness, and genuine hospitality. It was a place where anyone, regardless of who they were or where they came from, could walk in and feel that they belonged. As the renovations were completed, Snoop found himself standing in the newly revamped lobby, sipping a cup of freshly brewed coffee. The sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting a golden glow across the polished marble floors. The once sterile space now felt inviting and comfortable, with fresh flowers adorning every corner and a sense of calm that seemed to permeate the entire hotel. Guests moved in and out, greeted warmly by the staff, who now wore their new roles with pride and a sense of responsibility. The atmosphere had shifted completely, and it was clear that the transformation was not just superficial, it was in the very heart of the hotel. Maria, who had started as a housekeeper and was now the assistant manager, approached Snoop with a clipboard in hand. She handed it to him, smiling. "Mr. Dogg, the final guest survey results are in. Over 90% of visitors mentioned the hospitality as the highlight of their stay." Her voice was filled with pride, and Snoop couldn't help but smile back at her. "That's what I like to hear," he said, setting his coffee cup down on the counter. "It's not just about the building. It's about the people in it." Maria nodded, a look of gratitude in her eyes. She had seen the shift in the hotel's culture firsthand. What had once been a place where guests were treated based on their appearance or background was now a hotel where every person was treated with dignity and respect. The staff had embraced the changes, and the guests could feel it. The transformation was not just in the hotel's policies, but in the very spirit of the place. As Snoop watched the staff interact with guests, he took a moment to reflect on everything that had happened. It hadn't been an easy journey. There had been resistance, doubt, and uncertainty. But through it all, Snoop had remained focused on his vision. The hotel was no longer just a luxury property. It had become a symbol of what could happen when people worked together to create a better, more inclusive world. It wasn't just about the money, the fame, or the accolades. For Snoop, this project had been deeply personal. He had faced prejudice and discrimination throughout his career, but he had always pushed through. Now, he had used his platform and his resources to create something that would outlive him, a place where everyone was welcome, where everyone could feel the respect they deserved. This was his legacy, and it was one that would endure long after he was gone. As the morning passed and the hotel continued to bustle with activity, Snoop noticed a family walking in. The father, a man who bore a striking resemblance to Snoop, paused for a moment to shake his hand. "I read about what you did here," the man said. "It's inspiring." "Thank you." Snoop simply nodded, his expression warm. "This place is for everyone now," he replied. "That's how it should have always been." As the family moved on, Snoop turned toward the entrance of the hotel, his heart lighter than it had been in a long time. He had built many things in his life, records, legacies, a brand, but this was different. This wasn't just a business venture or a public statement. This was about creating something real, something meaningful. And he had done it. The Imperial Sunset Hotel had become more than just a building. It had become a symbol of hope, change, and the power of standing up for what was right. In the end, Snoop didn't just change the hotel. He changed the lives of everyone who had worked there and every guest who had walked through its doors. The hotel had become a place where everyone, no matter their background or identity, could find a sense of belonging. And that, Snoop knew, was worth more than anything money could buy. As he stood there, watching the guests come and go, Snoop made a silent vow to himself. Every person who walked through the doors of the Imperial Sunset Hotel would leave with a smile, knowing they had been treated with the respect they deserved. This wasn't just a hotel. It was a legacy of kindness, respect, and inclusion. And as Snoop looked out at the bustling lobby, he knew that this was only the beginning. Video title: Snoop Dogg rewrites the rules of hospitality, the transformation of the Imperial Sunset Hotel. Description: in this inspiring story, Snoop Dogg takes action to change the culture of a luxury hotel in Long Beach, California. After experiencing unfair treatment at the Imperial Sunset Hotel, Snoop decides to purchase the property and transform it into a beacon of respect, inclusion, and kindness. This video showcases his journey to make a real difference, creating a space where every guest is treated with dignity, no matter who they are. Watch as Snoop not only renovates the physical space but also leads the hotel staff through comprehensive training on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Witness the transformation of the Imperial Sunset Hotel from an exclusive, prejudiced place into one where hospitality is about respect for every person. Snoop Dogg's commitment to fairness and equality sets a powerful example for businesses everywhere. This story is a reminder that change starts with a single act of courage, and anyone with the will to do so can make a positive impact on the world around them. Subscribe for more inspiring stories and leadership insights. Tags: Snoop Dogg Hotel Transformation, Snoop Dogg Leadership, Imperial Sunset Hotel Story, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion in Hotels, Hospitality Transformation, How to Create an Inclusive Workplace, Snoop Dogg Business Ventures, Hotel Renovation Story, Respect and Inclusion in Hospitality, Inspirational Leadership Stories, Hotel Business Success, Changing Hotel Culture, Snoop Dogg Legacy, Transforming Prejudice in Business, The Power of Inclusion in the Workplace, Snoop Dogg's Impact on the Hospitality Industry, Inclusivity in Hotels, Making a Difference in Business.